There's an agency within the U.S. government that their whole mission is to search for MIA soldiers across the country missing in action. They're based out of Honolulu. They're the Defense POW MIA Accounting Agency, and we call them DPAA. Previously, in the early 90s, the Corps had provided archaeologists to the agency to do this kind of work. They then staffed their own archaeologists, and the Corps kind of dropped out in the early 2000s. But recently, they've wanted to ramp up the number of recoveries they're trying to do, and they've asked the Corps to come back and provide additional archaeologists. So this year, they put out a call to the archaeologists in the Corps, and we applied and were selected to go and participate in the recoveries. We didn't find out our mission right away, but we knew we were going to go to either Vietnam or Laos. And then we went through the process of all the vaccinations, everything we had to do, and we finally went out to Hawaii in mid-February of 2016. We were there for about a week, or 2 weeks, excuse me, and then we went to Vietnam. I ended up on the Vietnam mission. There was 5 of us that went to Vietnam, 3 that went to Laos. And we left the first week of March, and we came back the first week of April. So I was what's called the recovery leader. The recovery leader is always an archaeologist or a physical anthropologist. My job was anytime we set foot on the archaeological site, at the dig, I was in charge of all of the logistics, the planning, the managing manpower, that sort of thing, making decisions on where we dig, areas that we've done enough and we don't need to do anymore. Those were all my decisions. When we were off the site, then that was the team leader. But I, as the recovery leader, anything related to the archaeology was my decision and my planning and effort. So it was very interesting doing the work where we were, because you know, I'm a desert archaeologist. That's what I've done most of my career. We're working in the jungle, very different terrain. You know, most prehistoric archaeological sites in the desert out here are on, you know, flat places. People want to live where it's easy to live, right? Well, these aren't based on where someone chose to live. It's where a plane crashed or somebody was lost in a battle. So we were on the side of a very steeply pitched hillside, not the kind of place we would typically do an excavation. And the scale was so much larger than what we would normally do. We excavated a huge area on this hillside because we don't have the pinpoint of, say, on a prehistoric site, you might say, well, there's a ruin. So you can see the ruin, you know where to dig. In this case, you don't necessarily know. You have a general area that you're looking. So obviously the being in such an unfamiliar place was a challenge. You know, I didn't know. I had pictures of the site, a few kind of bad pictures. I didn't have a great sense of what it was going to look like. Showed up on the site, and there's 75 people looking at me and saying, well, what do you want me to do, right? So I had to figure that out very quickly and be light on my toes to figure those sorts of things out. And, you know, it was just very different than anything I've ever done here, even though my experience is somewhat extensive. I haven't done it in the jungle. So there's UXO, there's unexploded ordnance, all over the place out there. There's bullets, there's shrapnel, everything that you're working with. That actually goes back to one of the challenges. Is I kind of had it in my mind that I would use a metal detector and help to find pieces of the uniform or anything that he might have had in his pockets who I was looking for. But I couldn't do that because there was so much metal from explosives all over the place that the metal detector was constantly singing. So we only had one instance of having an actual piece of UXO on the site, which my UXO technician handled wonderfully and very professionally. You know, this mission and the agency DPAA involves all 4 branches, and so they all pull resources from wherever they can. And in this case, with us being part of the Army, this is a way for the Corps, for the Army by extension, to provide resources to this effort. It's really important. Every team is multi-branch, so they have all 4 branches represented, and this was a way for the Army to represent you know, with a recovery leader in this case. They chose their cases based on the ones that had the best chance of recovery. And then they selected each one of us to go on a particular case that fit our skill set. The other thing, of course, is the language barriers. You know, you're working with, I'm used to working with a bunch of archaeologists who are trained, who speak English, you know, that sort of thing. In this case, I'm the only trained archaeologist, the only one. Nobody else has ever done it. Nobody has a sense of how it's done. So I had to teach 75 people, 15 of which at least speak my language and had an idea of what we were doing. The other 60 speak Vietnamese, they're locals from the area. Working with them, I had two great linguists, which helped a lot. And as we went along, we actually learned quite a bit of Vietnamese. It related to archaeology, how to say dirt, how to say more dirt, how to say buckets, things like that. And we got to have a bit of a rapport with those guys, working with them every day for a month. I guess I'd say, obviously it improved me as an archaeologist. I had to do some things that really taught me new methods, taught me to think on bigger scales and think differently about how I do my job and do the things that I do. Even after 10 years of doing it, still learning some new things was great. One of the big things I learned that was that I guess I didn't know that this would hit me this way, but was just I learned so much about the soldiers that we have in our military and just how wonderful they are as people and how great they are to work with, how professional they are, how just interesting and fascinating people that they really are to work with, and how committed they are to those promises and pledges that they made. It meant so much to my team to go and look for one of their fallen brothers, and that struck me, really struck a chord with me. I sort of assumed that's the way it was, but to see it firsthand and to see how much that meant to them, that was a cool learning experience for me.